Hey, what's up, Toby?
Hey,
We
Mark.
have made it to Process Debt episode number 20.
Woo.
That's close to half a year, my friend.
Yeah, it is. I like it.
I mean, if what we should
Chopping
do,
wood, baby.
we could make it a lot longer if we did these every month,
Yeah.
but we would lose our ones of listeners,
All the ones.
all the ones.
When we get beyond, well, actually, when we open a Patreon account to
I don't
actually
know.
see what paid listeners want to do, maybe they'll
Pages.
tell us
Yeah. The, the,
one a
beh-
year is enough. I don't
the
know.
behind, the behind the scenes.
That's
That's
right.
basically It's you. It's basically you coming to town and us going to eat pizza.
That's
That's
right.
the behind the scenes. There's not a whole lot there, guys. Just telling you
Whoa,
that.
whoa, whoa. Yeah, it was good pizza, though. That was
It was good
outstanding
pizza.
pizza.
It was good pizza.
Oh, here we are, episode 20-ish.
Correct. So let's talk about just the difference between systems thinking and
Mm,
silos. That's kind of where we ended up last time.
that's right. Yeah. And it's a subtle difference, right? We say more. I'm
Yeah.
tracking with you. Say
I think
different
what's really
silos.
interesting is almost everybody wants to be very efficient
Mm,
at what their known scope of work is.
yeah.
And so, I've worked in a product work for quite a while, and it's very funny when you go and talk to an end user and you ask them why they do that. And they're like, well, I do that because I do the thing. And then you ask them like, how do I make your life better? And you're like, make the thing faster.
Yeah.
And like making the thing faster might literally be a Rube Goldberg machine that
Totally.
is screwing up the rest of downstream services. And it's incredibly fascinating.
We used the example last time of a car, and
Yeah.
I think cars are a really good example. You want to go faster, so you drop in a bigger engine.
Yep.
But then you realize that there's a knock-on effect, and that's going from a silo, singular piece, to a system where now
Yep.
we have to revisit the exhaust system.
Oh, yeah.
We have to
Yeah.
revisit the transmission and the gearing
Yeah.
ratios.
Yeah.
There's a whole knock-on effect, and I've seen this in manufacturing. I consulted in chemical manufacturing, not because I know anything about chemicals, but it was back in my Sarbanes-Oxley days. So how does a
Yeah.
transaction hit financials? And one of those conversations, though, was, how often do we grow our chemistry to a completed product?
Yeah.
And they started trying to explain things that plunged really rapidly into the deep end of the swimming pool, and I had my little water wings on, and they left me behind. But the heart of it was exactly this, right? And so many executives rolled through and they said, "Hey, just paint it candy apple red. That'll go faster."
Yeah.
But it's not the issue at all. That was a silo approach versus a systems approach.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Like, that's where the I think the humans shine, right? Where it's like, look, you gotta look in between the 2 things. Like,
Absolutely.
what are we actually trying to do? And, like, what the hardest thing about that is oftentimes we fixate on the solution, right? And the
Yeah.
solution is based on our own experience and based on our own, like, ability to navigate whatever that is.
Right.
And so, like, in software, oftentimes, like, I tend to be a bit of a software nut, and so I'll be around just clicking around, like, "Go click that thing," and they're like, "Oh, you can click that thing?" Like, you're like, "Yeah, just try it, break stuff." Like,
Yeah. See what
which
it does.
see what it does. I have a we launched a new software, um, and and I'm literally, like, going around, like, just doing all sorts of things, and I've actually happened to miss, like, lots of training, on this thing, and, like, I literally, like and so my joke is, like, I'm, hashtag untrained since
Yeah.
2024, but, I'm literally doing everything, solving my own problems, like,
Yeah.
figuring all this stuff out because I just break stuff.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what that has to do with systems thinking, but I do think that, like, there is an entropy
Yeah.
based on the ability to understand the entirety of the system.
Chris, I think you speak to a mindset too, though, and it's when we become comfortable asking for help and a willingness to break things first in
True.
our efforts to kind of discover.
Yeah.
There's only so far you can break stuff.
Yeah.
I can totally disassemble almost anything given enough
Yeah.
time, but putting it back together that's where my challenge lies. I'm
Yeah.
strong on disassembly. I'm weak on reassembly. And
That's funny.
so I'm a good sidekick for projects in the physical
Yeah, yeah,
realm. And in testing, I've discovered I will gladly click all the buttons out of order, not because I'm doing it on purpose. I just didn't give it enough attention.
yeah,
And so that's another nice way to break things. And so it's interesting that once you get comfortable just becoming self-sufficient in your exploration, you
yeah,
do cross some of those natural boundaries that maybe the designers and architects never anticipated.
yeah.
So
Well, the other thing that's interesting
interesting.
that happens in work a lot of times is like we don't have clear boundaries on what we own versus what other people own.
Oh, right.
And oftentimes if there's a gap, someone fills it even though they maybe shouldn't.
Yeah.
And so like you end up like, yeah, and I think that there's definitely process debt there where it's like, look, the person just won't let the thing burn.
Yeah.
So that they you never know that there's a problem because there's, is always on the spot just fixing things. It's really interesting.
That's a really good point that oftentimes we mistake a healthy process for what is in fact a very attentive process steward or
Yeah.
actor in the process.
Yeah.
Um, and so that fake it till you make it just means that we're probably killing somebody
Yeah.
inside of a bad process.
Oh yeah.
Their convictions are what carry it. So
Well, and the other funny thing that happens a lot in organizations, I don't know if you've seen this, but like where someone somewhere wants a report that has a high pay grade,
yeah.
and therefore there is a rush to fix the process to prop up the report for X amount of months or quarters.
Oh, brother.
And then the scaffolding goes away, but the report stays. And it's literally like the most fascinating thing where it's like somehow this and the report becomes this institutional
Yeah.
knowledge thing that basically is put together with duct tape and baling wire, and like it just doesn't work.
Yeah. Chris, that's such a great example. I don't know how many times over the years shifting, working with different clients and coming in
Sure.
with fresh eyes, they'll hand the report,
Sure.
this is what our senior leadership looks at. And
Yeah.
as you look at it, none of it really syncs with your spider senses, or you try to
Yeah.
reconcile it with other more standardized. And that's usually that indication, right? A
Yeah.
report without scaffolding. Somebody's doing the job just because they always have, and they don't know why it's being done.
Yeah. Another one of my favorites is a report with a single data point.
Mm.
That is literally my favorite because it's like, if you don't have a counterbalance, what are you doing? You're like I worked in inventory, and you're like, we want to have 0 out of stocks. It's like, all right, we'll go talk to the finance company or the
Yeah.
finance team because we're literally going to have to double our inventory,
Right.
right?
Well,
Oh, we want to lower our inventory. All right, well, you just go talk to the marketing team because we're going to go and tick off a bunch of people. like that's what's like with the complexity that we live in.
Mm,
There's a lot of just you push down one thing and the mole pops up somewhere else. It's a lot of just push and something else pops up.
absolutely. Well, and to your point, there's so many different stakeholders at play, right?
Yeah,
So the customer retention team wants a good experience. The
yeah,
product team wants to make great products.
yeah,
I was sharing with you before we started recording that at Christmas I'd purchased something from these ass hats called Fabletics, and uh,
I don't. Hey, I don't think they're going to sponsor us now. You just call them
well,
ass
all
hats.
right. Well,
It's fine. We're not sponsored by Athletics.
we're not taking their money. We're open to other money, but screw
All
those
right,
guys.
all right, go on.
Here's the part. They did it. They did so many things well, right? They inundated me with advertisements. Get fitness clothes for your kid,
Yeah.
because I don't think if they've met me, they realize they don't want to see me in stretchy pants.
Yes.
But so I assume it was, be a good dad, buy some stuff for your kiddo. So I buy about $30 worth of merch, and they
Okay.
did a great job of marketing and targeting it.
Yeah.
Had the products that
Yeah.
resonate, and so I was delighted. What I just discovered today, though, is that since my December transaction, they've since billed me twice for a monthly subscription for something I don't even know what in the hell it's about. And so nowhere in my journey through becoming a customer and up to this point, said kiddos' birthdays around the corner, and I thought,
Yeah.
she's liked those. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll look back at some of their stuff. It's not, a bazillion dollars like
Yeah.
Lululemon, which I usually
I'm
pronounce, but
I'm sure they took care of you, which,
they, yeah, they have. So I called up the number because clearly it was an oversight, and they were quick
Oh,
to identify me through my voice
oh,
recognition, which was impressive. But then they put me in the 45-minute queue.
ooh,
And about 10 minutes in,
no
they
bueno.
said, "Congratulations, you're now only number 194th in line."
Ah,
So it's not an accidental routine.
no.
And we're recording on a Wednesday night, so it's not
Yeah.
your typical mad rush for fitness wear evening.
Yeah.
We all know that's Tuesday night.
Yep.
So I thought, I'm 194th. What that tells me is they've probably actively been screwing thousands of people that are
Oh, yeah,
just
yeah.
super angry, and they don't have
Yeah.
a podcast to get on and say,
No.
Fabletics and the folks at fabletics.com are in fact a bunch of asshats. So
Yeah.
what they've done beautifully in the marketing department, their
Yeah.
social media blitz, their product curation, all top shelf. But now I'm going to burn them at every opportunity
Yep.
because they broke our implicit agreement around
Yep.
transactions. And so
Yeah.
here's a piece of processed debt that I hope they're reaping the profits in the near term because it's going to cost them in the long term.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
There's 190 other three people, that are at least pissed off. Hopefully they're still in queue. I had bigger
That's-
things to do.
that found it this month. Like, isn't it crazy? Like, what's nuts about that is like it reminds me a little bit of like the 80s. Like, we grew up in the 80s, so I think we
Indeed.
were a little limited in what we really saw or what we would have seen as adults, but it was like go and get the money, right? Get into plastics, right? Or whatever.
Yes.
And so I think we've kind of returned a little bit to that where it's like we've got to go do these things. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about last time where it's like, hey, let's push something down. And you're like, but at what cost?
A penny.
And they, yeah.
Sorry, I was thinking about Columbia Records.
What were you thinking about Columbia?
Well, in the 80s, you could get 8 albums for a penny.
Oh, it was so great.
You remember that?
That was wonderful. Tell us what an album is.
An
Toby.
album is like a piece of Spotify music stretched into a box with awesome cover art.
Oh my gosh.
And even if you go out and try to buy an album that would have a thing called a record, a pressed piece of plastic or vinyl, they didn't publish the lyrics there. So,
No.
there's a whole generation of us that don't realize that any of these artists actually used words. I thought we were just supposed to make up whatever went along.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was only learned recently that was inaccurate, but
no, it's so funny when you like find out like in your late 30s or early 40s, like I've been saying that wrong for 2 decades. And then there's some songs where like literally even the singers don't even, we got a little bit off track here, but to your point, I mean,
yeah,
I mean,
your singer doesn't know.
Well, what's interesting is like that whole, like what you bring up a good point on the whole, you put a penny down because I did the same thing for BMG and that was amazing because you got 12 CDs and then you got to pick every week. I think you had, how did you pick? Did you have to mail it in?
Oh, dude. Yeah, it was all mail order.
That's right. You had to pick and you mailed it in and they mailed it back to you.
Yeah.
Those were the days, man.
I don't know what my permanent record looks like, but I'm sure that they have several complaints, about Toby was slow to buy his follow-up albums from his commitment. But in the world of process debt, that was debt they chose to carry.
Yeah.
And I feel like the world is flipped where now it becomes my job to discontinue a subscription that I didn't sign up for.
Yeah.
Right. And then they put me in this extraordinarily long queue.
Yep.
Never had an opportunity to speak with a human.
Yep.
But now it becomes my job to disentangle it and dispute it through my credit card list. So it's really fascinating. This is where tech, I think, has gotten us in this place where we don't ask, should we? The question is
Yeah.
always, could we?
Yeah.
And I think that, much in line with our broader discussions, bring it back home to process, that the answer should be what is broken and then why is it broken?
Sure.
And should we fix it? Because
Yeah.
sometimes the answer is it's broken for good reasons,
Yeah.
right? But you got to go to the shop floor to find out why. You got to go to the cleaner.
And sometimes it's broken and we can't get to it.
And then,
And that's legitimate and that's fine.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like having eyes wide open. Well, we did it again. We made it to the end of 20, right?
yeah,
Sweet.
just a
Thank
hair
you,
over
Chris.
5 minutes today, but that's what happens when you get a
It's awesome, man. We'll pick
right.
it up again next week. Thanks,
Good
man.
deal. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Have a good
Bye.
week.